So first things first, how are you?
Doing great.
Doing great.
Happy to be here.
Happy to be here.
So where I want to start is, Phoebe, do you remember the first time you were introduced to the music of Conor?
Yeah, my friend Kathleen, who I grew up with, showed me Conor's music. And then I went to a music festival with my mom for many years that Conor had a stage at, where he would like curate the bands, and I found a lot of my favorite bands that way.
What did you hear in his music?
Like, what did I hear in it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Torture. I really liked how it was similar to a lot of the music I grew up with, like a lot of my favorite singer-songwriters like Neil Young and Joni Mitchell and Jackson Browne, but it was like my generation, and I was allowed to like it, and my parents didn't know what it was. Yeah.
So there was a kind of a cool factor to it as well.
Yeah, totally.
And vice versa, when did you first hear Phoebe sing or play?
I guess it was the summer of 2016, so like a couple years ago. My friend books bands at this place called the Bootleg Theater in LA, and a band canceled kind of last minute, and I was making a record in LA at the time, and he phoned up and just said, hey, is there any way like you'd want to come just do anything tonight? So like just the people I was hanging with that were working on the record with me, like Jim James and Gillian Welch and this guy Jonathan Wilson, we all went and kind of did this like secret show, kind of surprise fun thing. And he asked, he's like, well, my favorite songwriter in LA is this person, Phoebe Bridgers. Is it cool if she plays? We were like, sure. Because that, you know, there was a bunch of people playing kind of short sets, and I hadn't heard any music at all, and saw her play that.
You've never heard music. Yeah.
I'd never heard it. Gone my whole life without hearing any music. No, that was the first night I heard her play, and, you know, like a lot of people, was like, you know, kind of stopped dead in my tracks. Like when I heard her voice, I was like, whoa, this is like, it's like, you know, when you hear a voice that it's like simultaneously like something like new and unique, but it also feels like an old friend or something, you know, you're like, oh, that thing that I've been waiting for.
Thanks, buddy.
You know? And yeah.
So did you immediately think, I want to work with her?
No, I mean, I was just like, this is really cool, and we talked a little bit, and then she ended up mixing her album with Mike Mogus, who plays in Bright Eyes with me, at our studio in Nebraska. So she came out and did that, and then we ended up doing like another kind of just like little show for fun in Omaha, and then eventually went on tour. And yeah, I think it was like when we were on tour that I was like, you know, one of those like kind of like late night after the show, like, we should start a band, you know, which I'm kind of like infamous for saying to like a lot of people, like, we should start a band. Always sounds like a good idea. Normally I don't follow through, but yeah, we ended up kind of writing a song. It's actually the first song on the record. Didn't know what I was in for. We wrote that just not knowing if it was going to be for my record or for her record, or just maybe something someone else would record. And then I think it was like at that point that we were like, wow, this like seems like it could be its own project. And so we kept making more songs, and yeah.
What did you, because obviously you've made a lot of music before, and you've released your album, so in terms of songwriting, what did you see in each other's songwriting by working together? Maybe how you approach music, how you approach certain...
Yeah, I tend to be pretty like autobiographical. Okay. I find it hard to kind of like look outside myself at all. And Conor does like a lot more like character study kind of stuff, which is really cool, and I hope to take that from this experience, because it gets boring to like talk about myself over and over. So.
Yeah, I was like impressed at how much sort of like natural production ideas and things that Phoebe had even while we were writing the music, because a lot of times I like don't think about that stuff until later, but she already had like ideas for like drums and bass and stuff like while while we were still writing the songs, which I thought was like really cool and informed the recording process. Like I feel like we did spend like a month making the record, but I felt like we were like sort of steps ahead just from like demoing and talking about production ideas, and then like, yeah, just like her ability as a singer, she has a lot. She's like naturally gifted in that area a little bit more than your boy, so it was cool to be like writing a song and like be like, wow, it'd be like if the melody could go, maybe like higher here, or I'd have like some notion, but it wasn't going to be anything that I would get to with my own voice, because I tend to like kind of get stuck in like same melody motifs and recycling a lot of ideas. So to have like someone with like a totally great gift for melody and just like be able to inject these like awesome things that I wouldn't have got to on my own. So that was very cool about writing together.
And I think you've both written with a lot of people before. So what is, in a sense, the appeal of writing with somebody else? Because I can imagine benefits for either doing it yourself, but also doing it with somebody else. So especially for people who have also written solo albums, what is the benefit in working with somebody else?
I mean, I think just like sharing the kind of burden of the burden. That sounds like a bad word, but sharing the task of writing the song. I mean, it really is. I think in the best case scenario, it's like two heads are better than one sort of thing. So
yeah, I do a lot of like apologizing for myself, or I finish, as soon as I finish a song, it kind of doesn't really feel done until I've showed it to someone who I trust. So even when I write by myself, then I need to like, I want someone to like tell me what I want to hear, that it's great or something. But I feel like that starting from the first line of the song can be really helpful. Like just knowing the whole way through that like someone else thinks it's cool is
totally,
is
yeah.
nice.
Just having someone to kind of, bounce all the ideas off of like along the way, Yeah, I think you do end up with like, more confidence. Like another thing that I kind of learned from Phoebe or took from working with her was just, I tend to like, if I finish something, I kind of like, okay, it's done, let's move on to the next thing. Whereas she's really good about like, that's, it's good, but like, what about the second verse? Like, let's go back. Like, there's a couple lines that could be better, or like, let's make this, the melody more interesting here. Or, I guess like an extra layer of like revision and kind of editing that I am guilty of not always taking the time to do. So that was very great to have someone with that kind of work ethic.
And what I find interesting is you mentioned kind of the differences in between your songwriting styles, you being a bit more narrative and character driven, and you more personal, autobiographical. How do you balance those two elements then when you're writing songs together? Let's take the opening track. Is it autobiographical, or is it a bit of both?
It's definitely a bit of both.
Yeah.
And I think in like character studies, quote unquote, you have to like insert yourself, which I learned from you, is that I don't think I really had the confidence to do that before. But yeah, even if we're not talking about like actual literal personal experience, it is definitely like deeply ingrained in our own lives.
Yeah, and I think whatever, even if you're writing, from an autobiographical place, I think if it's a good song and it's well written, it's going to have a universal quality to it that people can relate to. I mean, I know that Phoebe's music does that for me. Because I definitely like, get a little turned off if I hear a song that feels, I don't know, that's done in a way that feels like, oh yeah, ripped right out of the diary, or, you know, a little too, I don't know, on the nose in that respect. And I never feel that way about your stuff. You know what I mean? Like there's a level of like craft to the words that's interesting enough that I'm not, you know, it's compelling whether or not I am invested in whatever Phoebe's life. You know what I mean? Like, which I think is like what it has to be if it's going to be a good song. You know?
Right. There's one line from that song that stuck out to me, which is "You get burned for being honest."
Yeah.
Where did that line come from?
I think it's sort of about like,
we're both very pale.
yeah, we're both very, yeah, get burned literally for no matter what. But I think it's about like slacktivism and like how social media can kind of be this veil of like, look at how, you know, invested I am in the world and politics and whatever. And if someone were to actually be like, I don't care, or I posted this big long thing because I didn't feel like actually doing something.
Yeah.
I think that would make you an asshole.
Totally.
So.
Yeah, and the next line is, "I never did anything for anybody," right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, you know, I don't think that's to say that it means nothing to like fall into the like posting a bunch of change.org petitions or whatever. I don't think it means nothing and it's better than doing nothing, but it can kind of feel self-righteous to do that kind of stuff. And
yeah, like self-congratulatory, like, you know. But at the same time, one thing we talked about when we were writing that song was like, we're just as guilty as ever, you know. It's definitely, it's definitely not us like wagging the finger at anyone, you know. It's just like, I think it's like any of us that are lucky to live in the privileged Western world and, you know, have like, you know, more or less basic needs always met, you know, it's great to have empathy for everything that's happening in the world. And like Phoebe said, better to do something than nothing, you know. But it can feel, you know, futile or, yeah, more for yourself than you know, the cause or whatever.
Yeah, I think we've all been around like, you know, 5 people holding glasses of wine, like talking about the state of the world and like feeling good about themselves for having big opinions, and it just, yeah, it was kind of shining a light. I feel like I notice myself doing it, or like preaching to the choir, talking to my friends with the exact same opinions as me, being like, you know, acting like we're doing something by talking to each other.
actually changing any minds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Topics like these, issues like these, how do they become songs? Is it just something that you're thinking about or discussing and then it kind of forms itself into a song? Or, well,
yeah, I mean, I think that was another thing that was like cool about having like co-writing a whole record is I think a lot of the songs did start with like conversations or just things we were like mutually, you know, both mutually interested in and talking about, and then would find their way into a song. I mean, it wasn't like, okay, let's sit down and write about this, but you know, like, yeah, when you're kind of both on the same wavelength with some of these things, I think they emerge in the songs without having to, I don't know, plan it out too much, but yeah.
sonically then, I assume this is different for each song, but do the lyrics usually come first or does the music usually come first?
Weirdly, I feel like we're the opposite of what one might think. Like your melodies and chords always come first. And a lot of the time I start with lyrics.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it varied song to song on this album, I think.
Yeah, I find it easier to have the melody kind of set and write the words to the melody. I mean, definitely for my own stuff. With this, it was a little different because it was obviously like a partnership. But yeah, I think the melody tends to inform, you know, the amount of words and the phrasing and how you want, where you want the lines to end, and you know, like the gut punches to happen and stuff. It's like sort of dictated by the melody and the music for me usually.
And I've like deleted tweets because I was like, oh, that should be a song actually.
Well, because I can imagine if you have those melodies, that in a way drives what type of lyrics come out as well, right?
Yeah, I think it can, but it's also fun to play with that. Like we were talking about that someone was asking us yesterday or the other day about songs that have, you know, an upbeat sort of, or uplifting poppy melody, but the words are like the opposite, you know, which is fun too, to kind of play with that paradox or whatever. But yeah.
Which song, and this is an unfair question I suppose, but which song on the album do you think the collaboration between the two of you worked best?
Ooh.
Well, there's the one we wrote the fastest, which maybe, and it was like the last one that we wrote. Okay. We wrote it the fastest, so I think it kind of was like folding in on itself what
Dylan Thomas is what.
Yeah, Dylan Thomas was, I was pretty sure we were not gonna write a song that night. I had like gotten back to the real city after being in like Panorama City all day working with my band Boy Genius, and it was like very late, and we were set to record like in the next few days, and ended up like pulling out a voice memo of something that we had come up with like forever ago, and then like wrote it really fast.
Yeah, I guess that was a good one because we had already written however many songs before that, so I think we're getting better, I guess. Yeah.
With that being said, then, this is one album, and you all have your own different projects that you do, but do you see a continuation of this in the future?
I mean, if you're up for it. No, I mean, I think I would love to. Obviously, there's so much. Phoebe's the hardest working person in show business, so she's probably going to be too famous soon, but...
Yeah, probably.
You know, as long as you got time for the little guys.
No, but I can imagine, do you have plans for touring now?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's definitely gonna happen.
Yeah, we're gonna tour in the spring. So yeah, I think we'll be back around these parts like in May. So come on out, Amsterdam. Looking for you.
Final question then to kind of round off in terms of songwriting. Then this might be difficult because it must be different again every song. But what are you looking for in terms of a song when you write one? Or are you looking for something?
I think that kind of comes later. I feel like I know if I like something, if I want to keep listening to it, or it's in my head forever. Yeah, I feel like that's what I'm looking for. Because
you mentioned melodies, and one song that stuck out for me in terms of melodies and kind of the flow of it was Chesapeake. So how does a song like that become a song that ends up on the album?
That's like one of my favorites actually, because it was my friend Chris and I were sitting around with guitars, not necessarily even planning on writing a song for this record. We just were messing around, playing a melody over and over, singing over and over, like ranting to each other about like the biz or like music or how depressing it is to see people you think are great kind of fall for no reason, and people you think suck be huge for no reason or whatever. And Conor came wandering into the room, tripping mushrooms, and
which doesn't happen all the time.
No.
It was a special occasion.
And he like started talking to us, and then like immediately writing all those beautiful words. We're like, God damn it.
gotta tap into the
Even fucked up.
astral plane sometimes.
Connor's a weird poet.
Well, there's one line. This reminds me. There's one line, and I can't remember it exactly, but what you mentioned. My hero is playing in front of nobody in a parking lot. Did you have a specific person in mind?
I have so many people in mind.
Yeah.
An unfortunate amount of people in mind.
That's true. Yeah, I have so many friends that are like, and I respect this more than anything because I think I would do that too, but I think about for myself, like if really no one cared, would I still be out there like playing? And I think the answer is yes. But I know for like some of my friends that have kind of had ups and downs in their careers that are like true lifers though, they're still like, get in, even if like say they even like lose their booking agent, they're still like, oh, I'll just go back to booking my own shows or like doing house shows or little art spaces or playing for whoever, getting in the car, like driving around. I know so many songwriters that still do that, and I mean that's like, that just kind of says it all. If kind of puts it all in perspective of like what you're really in it for, and I don't know, I can't help but like respect that, even though it's sad as shit, and like what Phoebe's saying, it's like the cream doesn't always rise to the top, you know what I mean? Like you look at some people that have great success in careers, and of course God bless them, like I don't know, anyone can like what they like, but I'm always shocked by what sometimes gets that treatment versus like stuff that I like. But that's why I will never be a A&R person for a major successful label.
All right, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thanks.